Clifford Stone, and you're listening to EA Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Enigmatic Anomalies, EA Radio. I'm your host for tonight, Terry Ling, and I'm ready for the truth. I hope you are too, because tonight we'll be speaking with Anthony F. Sanchez, the author of UFO Highway, and his question is, are you ready for the truth? Anthony has written an incredible book that, in my opinion, is one of the most thought-provoking and provocative pieces of literature that I've read in a really long time. UFO Highway is an explosive book, which has been deemed the most important book in ufology in the last 20 years. Anthony is the founder of Sceptre Radio Network and is the organizer of the annual UFO Paranormal Summit in Sacramento, California. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll be discussing Dulce, New Mexico, Area 51, human origins, and reptilians, just to name a few. Sit tight, we'll be right back.
UFO sightings in 2007. 854 abductions by aliens or unknown species reported by American and British citizens. Pressed information about collisions with passenger aircraft and UFOs that has been kept from the public knowledge for years. And only one trusted source on information from some of the top UFO researchers in the world. Exclusive information that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Trusted, connected, accurate. The UFOstore.com. Expand your personal library with fast shipping and instant downloadable information from the largest selection of UFO products on the internet by going to theufostore.com or call on the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week order line at 541-523-2630. The truth is out there, and the UFOstore.com has it.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies, EA Radio. And we're very proud to have with us tonight Anthony Sanchez. So let's get right to the meat of all this, because there's so much to talk about. I am ready for the truth, Anthony. So it says on the front of your book, UFO Highway, are you ready for the truth? And I really am. I love that title. It's just riveting. So this is really seriously one of the most incredible books that I have ever read. And it really opened my eyes up to all the different things. And I found as I was reading it, all the different things in ufology kind of came together and made sense to me, like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, where I would think, scratching my head, what is that all about? But when I read this book, it seemed to make perfect sense. So it really was like a highway of information. How did this all come about for you?
Well, initially the book was called UFO Highway. it was actually going to be called Extraterrestrial Highway because I was focusing on the Area 51 phenomena, that whole, bit of shenanigans that's taking place in Nevada. But as time went on, things change, and I kind of pulled away from my Area 51 research, and I started focusing on human origins, which I had been researching for about 10 years straight at that time. Mm-hmm. This is in 2009, 2010-ish, when I encountered this individual who regaled this amazing story about his experiences at Dulce. So, not being one of the UFO researchers or alien UFO researchers that bought into the whole Dulce lore, because as you know, there's stories on reptilians, there's stories on grays, there's stories out there on an individual called Thomas Costello. There's another one with Phil Schneider, and you get so many different stories on what Dulce is, what it's about, what it represents.
Right.
And for me, the whole reptilian angle, which was a major part of the whole Dulce story, was just not something that I believed in, nor did I want to research. I'm not one of those researchers that tries to be like a mainstream ufologist, like, oh my God, I better not upset Stanton Friedman. Oh, I better not talk about, Frank Warren and Scott Ramsey or Dennis Balthazar because I don't want them to be angry at me and I want to be able to speak at so-and-so's event. And I don't care about that.
Right.
I have information. I'm willing to share it, and it is up to you to decide. Is this information viable? Is the story that this one man was telling to me viable? Is it something that you can validate? I leave it up to the reader. I don't try to make any grandiose representations on any level. All I'm doing is telling the story of one person who says he worked at Dulce. Now, the work that I did on human origins, I had this whole transformation hypothesis of how humanity came to be, fits in perfectly with a bunch of the information that he's sharing. And for a lot of people, when they connect the dots, they're like, oh my God, it's finally making sense. If there is this covert group of off-world beings and on-world, aliens, and I'll explain that in a moment,
okay,
that are working in collusion with the governments, and they say this about their history, their past, their origins, it kind of coincides with a lot of the information that was, being shared with individuals like Zachariah Sitchin and Eric von Daniken, which is decades-old information that has now come to the surface because of the ancient aliens phenomena, and people who have had experiences, personal experiences, are able to read my book, UFO Highway, and then look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm not crazy.
Exactly.
Now I know that there's somebody else out there who has information that can validate my own personal experiences.
That's very true. Mm-hmm.
So I talk about human origins. I talk about the Dulce base. I talk about Project Bluebeam and HARP. And I talk about my introduction to Norio Hayakawa, who is a trailblazer in the researcher area, because a lot of people don't give Norio credit, but if it weren't for Norio Hayakawa, a lot of the information we know about both Dulce and Area 51 would not be in the public arena. It's not something that would be, all we would have to rely on were these stories about, these individuals that cannot be validated, reptilians and, whatever. Stories that don't make sense, that don't have this cohesiveness about them. So I pay homage to Norio. Norio doesn't believe in the aliens and UFO phenomena, by the way. He doesn't buy into all that. He's a skeptic when it comes to that stuff. Mm-hmm. But he's one of the few skeptics that's open-minded and says, maybe, just maybe, there's enough evidence to support the existence of something happening there. Whether it be, alien in origin or, government in origin, we don't know. But it's plausible. So that's why I respect Norio. He's never doubted anything that I had presented to him. And so that's one of the reasons why he wrote the foreword to my book. And Norio is one of those guys that's been around. You know, most of your listeners are going to know Norio because he's been on UFO Hunters on the History Channel. He's been on Coast to Coast like practically every year, going all the way back to Art Bell. He has, as a matter of fact, he was just on TV with Anthony Bourdain,
really?
The famous chef in New York who has that new show on CNN. They did a special on New Mexico, and the first person they visited wasn't a cook or a chef; it was Norio Hayakawa. So they fit Norio into that. So
interesting.
And in that episode on CNN, Norio took Anthony Bourdain to some of the same exact locations that he and I went. And for the people that are listening to the show, if you want to know what I look like, you can watch an episode of Ancient Aliens. It's episode 510, which is also 52, the Von Daniken Legacy, which aired last year on April 5th. I was one of the researchers at the Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis, and I was on the same stage as Giorgio Tsoukalos, Eric Von Daniken, George Noory, Scotty Roberts, among a host of other renowned, and Ian Punnett from Coast to Coast. There was a bunch of people there, and I was very honored that I was invited to speak on the stage and be seated right next to Philip Coppens, who passed away. Rest in peace, Philip. What an amazing researcher.
Amen.
And I do know his wife, Kathleen McGowan, and she's on Facebook and very accessible. And, it's been a tough time for Kathleen.
Sure.
But again, she in her own right is a great author and not necessarily a researcher in the sense that Philip was, but Philip and Von Daniken and Zacharias Sitchin, these are individuals who, really helped awaken us to the ancient alien phenomenon. And you have Giorgio Tsoukalos, who does a great job, and Jason Martell, who also does a great job. But, these are like the superstars of the History Channel or whatever. And I have nothing negative to say about them. It's just that, those guys are famous. It's great. They got real nice hairstyles and everything, and they dress flamboyantly. That's not who I am. That's not the type of researcher that I am, and I'm not seeking fame. I don't ask to be put on TV. If it happens, it happens. I'm seriously interested in the Dulce phenomena, Area 51, and how our government is connected to these phenomena.
Yeah, that's certainly the point of interest.
So a lot of people ask me, okay, so what is the Dulce phenomenon? Because we know about Area 51. We know the Bob Lazar story, with John Lear. We know that there was a sighting of a UFO. The two of them were arrested. We know about the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department. There's a lot going on at Area 51. I was actually going to have a UFO night vision conference. We were going to invite as many people as we could with night vision goggles, and we were going to scan the skies. And then the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, I guess, somehow influenced the people that agreed and to host our events to cancel on us. And we couldn't get another location unless it was going to be a parking lot outside of a motel owned by a friend. And I didn't want to put him through that. And it was a devastating loss to us. But the official answer was they don't want 200 people with night vision goggles, all Gen 3 night vision, scanning the skies all at once, especially when they're videotaping. So it's like, okay. But Dulce, I met this guy, and his story is that he actually worked there. And it's so interesting because not very many of us get the opportunity to sit down face-to-face with somebody who says, yes, I worked alongside Grays. Mm-hmm. Travis Walton was abducted in Snowflake, Arizona, and he states in his book, now I want to preface this comment with this statement. What you saw in the movie, for the majority of people who saw Fire in the Sky, the movie, that's not reality. That's not what happened to Travis. Travis will look you in the eye and he will tell you that is Hollywood influencing the facts.
Which is why he's doing the new book. Which is why he's also doing the new movie.
That's right. So the book that Travis Walton wrote, the Travis Walton Experience, which is Fire in the Sky, the Travis Walton Experience, that details what truly happened to Travis. And in there, when he talks about his abduction, he mentions how he was taken to the inside of a mountain where he saw humans in uniforms working alongside gray alien beings. also in uniform. Now, that sounds like the Dulce that was described to me by this retired United States Air Force colonel. Mm-hmm. Okay? That sounds like the Rio Arriba Scientific and Technological Underground Auxiliary, the official government name for Dulce. It is a military base. It is a deep underground military base. It is a scientific research center. It does exist. And I have personally stayed with the Apache, the Jicarilla Apache people, in their home. And I was taken on a tour of their area, the township, and taken up to the top of the Archuleta Mesa. And while I was there, I was the first person to find government equipment illegally placed on sovereign Jicarilla Apache Indian land. You got to remember, this is a sovereign nation. That is technically not the United States of America.
Right.
When you go to the Jicarilla Apache Reservation and when you're in the township of Dulce, you're no longer in the United States. You're in a sovereign nation. It's another country. They have their own president, their own vice president. They have what they refer to as a tribal council. And that tribal council governs much in the way that the executive office and any other, branch of government functions for, whether it be a state, a city, or the country for that matter. Mm-hmm. So they do things differently. When I went there, I had already formed a 2-year relationship with many of the people there in Dulce. I read all 52 of the Jicarilla, the sacred texts of the Jicarilla, which is kind of like these stories that talk about their origins. And I met with people and I became friends with these people. So I had an inroad that Governor Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, did not have. So when he went on Friday, the 21st of October, I was supposed to meet with him there. I was actually asked by the producer to be there as a consultant for the show that they did for Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory. Now, I couldn't get there until that Sunday night, early Monday morning, 2 o'clock in the morning I got there. It was just too late for me. I couldn't get there in time because I had other commitments. I had shared custody of my kids, things like that. I just couldn't break away to be there on the Friday. They did not allow Governor Ventura to film on Dulce. So when you watch that episode, they're technically in a town called Lumberton, which is east of Dulce.
Right.
Which is southeast of Dulce. They're not in Dulce.
Yeah,
so
I saw that particular. Yeah.
So, when Anya Briggs, who's the psychic, starts walking around and says she feels that there's reptilians beneath her feet, 2 things are happening. Either one, she's not telling the truth, or 2, there's a facility there that is stretching out further than we even know about. So, and I'm not going to put her down because I know Anya, she's a friend, and I met her, and, and she's a really nice person. But, to me, as a researcher, when I look at that, again, one of 2 things are happening. One, she doesn't know, she's making it up, or the facility is larger than we can imagine.
And that's very possible.
It's possible. Mm-hmm. But the caveat is that I don't buy into the pure reptilian story. Okay? So I know that based on the information that I have, there are grays there at Dulce. Now, there was this one group of grays, this secondary group of grays called like the scimitar, and these guys had reptilian-like traits that were genetically built into them. You have to read the book to get the majority of the information on this off group or this genetic subgroup of the grays there, but they had like chameleon-like features where they could blend in seamlessly, like camouflage, for instance. They were much larger, much stronger, but equally as intelligent as the grays that created them. So they were killed off, essentially, by these grays that are there at Dulce working with the military. Now, I think that predated any military, engagement, any engagement with the U.S. military. So, but that's the only connection to reptilians that I have in the information that was provided to me. Now, I don't discount the existence of reptilians because I've met so many people who have had personal experience with regards to reptilians. One woman in particular who was impregnated repeatedly by reptilians. This is what she told me. And then, the gestation period was 3 months, and every 90 days they'd come to, take the embryo and reimpregnate her. These are some strange stories. That's information that I'm getting as a researcher.
Does anybody know where that woman is? Is there any validation to any of that?
Right here in Northern California. And I met another woman in 2010 in Taos, New Mexico, a very, very well-known researcher from Los Angeles whose father was a high-ranking officer at Edwards Air Force Base. And she said when she was in her teens, a very similar type thing happened to her where she was repeatedly visited by a reptilian, being. And you could imagine what happened to her, and she was terrified of them. And so that's the kind of information that I get on reptilians. Now, when I got my information about the deep underground military base in Dulce from this retired United States Air Force colonel, there was nothing about reptilians. In fact, everything hinged on these gray beings. Everything focused on the existence of these gray beings working in collusion with the military.
Well, it seems that even Clifford Stone has talked many times about the fact that there are grays that interact with the military.
I truly believe it. This is a belief that I have come to embrace. I do believe that there is reverse engineered technology that is now in the public sector and in the private sector, both the government and both private corporations are utilizing technologies. In the government, they're utilizing artificial intelligence, algorithms and subroutines and operating systems that are based on artificial intelligence, AI, that it's far beyond anything that we could have conceived when we originally, began programming and, creating, software. Now we have software that can interact with us like if it were another living sentient being.
Right.
And Google just spent, $400 million on a company that focuses on both robotics and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, interesting.
Why would they do something like that?
Oh, I have my ideas.
That the government does not have a foothold in that acquisition?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've got to take a real quick break. This is riveting. It's wonderful talking to you, but we do have to honor our sponsors here. So we'll be right back with Anthony Sanchez to hear more about the UFO Highway. Stay with us.
My name is Michael IV, and I'm the lead investigator for the Seekers Paranormal Society. About 7 years ago, I had my first paranormal experience. Now, armed with the latest in paranormal equipment, I'm setting out to find the truth. Joining me on my quest to capture evidence is my equipment tech Ramon Vivas and investigator Steve Welton. Take a front seat into our paranormal world as we are driven into the unknown. We are the Seekers Paranormal Society.
SeekersParanormal.com.
For hundreds of years, those that have been curious enough to look to the stars in search of something beyond ourselves have been shunned, persecuted, and laughed at. Now, it's time for those curious few to laugh back. Saucer Seekers is a hilarious online comic strip that takes a humorous look at our world of disinformation while facing everyday life from the point of view of those who devote their lives to the search for the truth. The Saucer Seekers! TheSaucerSeekers.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies Radio. We're talking with Anthony Sanchez tonight, and this is a wonderful conversation going on here. I hope you're ready for the truth. We're still talking about it. So, Anthony, just before we left for break, you were sharing with us a few things about the humanoid, reptilian, and the Greys. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that some more. I'm very interested in hearing about this. We were just talking briefly about the Obama's reptilian. What was the actual name of that documentary that was shared?
Oh, yeah. If you go to YouTube and you type in Obama's Reptilian Secret Service agents, it'll take you to a video of the APAC conference.
A lot of people have tried to debunk that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so there's so many videos on YouTube where there's obvious, compression, a failure in the compression, which is caused during streaming of the video, whether it's live or recorded, and it's unrecoverable. It's something that cannot be repaired during the live streaming because it is a compressed stream of data packets that is going across the wire, and it is what it is. But when that breaks down, everything falls apart. From one side of the screen to the other side of the screen, if it's just the face, sometimes, you'll see other areas of the screen breaking down. The structure of the screen falls apart. I know about this. I'm a senior-level software engineer. I write software right now for a living that deals with streaming data packets over, streaming technologies like Shoutcast, Icecast, Windows Media Audio streaming. So I know about this technology. Mm-hmm. In that video, again, it's Obama's reptilian secret service spotted at APAC conference. Just type in Obama and reptilian; it'll come.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. It's been a while,
but,
so
yeah. The best one at YouTube is from a YouTube user called Reptilian Resistance. It is only 2 minutes and 58 seconds long. It is the only one you should even bother looking at. Here's why I believe this one is highly possible as a legitimate video depicting a real humanoid. Whether you want to call it a reptilian or a gray human, I don't believe it's a reptilian. I believe that it is, if it is real, it is an alien. It is a gray alien / human hybrid.
Okay.
Here's why I think it's real. When the breakdown or the failure of the human appearance occurs in this one particular being, look around him. Look at every other person in that video and tell me, do you see any semblance of a breakdown in the video that you would see in some of the other ones, where like the digital pattern starts to degrade.
Right.
In this video, nothing happens to anyone else in the video. In fact, the distortion that is happening does not even look like the video degradation failures that we see in the other countless lizard people videos, that are on Fox or CNN that we see on YouTube. I'm telling you, this one is different, and in my opinion, this is possibly a gray alien hybrid.
Okay. Well, I am definitely going to check that out. I mean, it's been a while since I looked at that. It's been a long time, so
the question is, are extraterrestrial races living amongst us?
I believe they are. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people will tell you that the answer is yes. There's a lot of experiencers, and there's people like me, researchers, who have interviewed people that have stated they work for the government, and they look me dead in the eye and will tell me, and have told me, we work with aliens. As a matter of fact, many of these aliens are not even, they were here alongside us for the longest time as we evolved into the state that we are today.
Well, I've heard that they've been here since the 30s, so, And
that's right. And then this one group that lives in Dulce says that they've been there for 25,000 years in North America, that they were placed there by this other group who I absolutely believe are the Anunnaki or descendants of the Anunnaki.
Mm-hmm. Very possible.
So, yeah.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen an alien of any type, any extraterrestrial life form at all?
As a child, I have personally seen grays. In fact, I was placed into therapy as a result of that. So, it's okay.
No, I understand. I've actually seen them, so I know they're here. But, a lot of people, play this game with, they may or they may not be. But, yeah, they're here. So I'm sure you did see them.
I encounter, two types of people, two sets of people that have had experiences, paranormal experiences, or encounters. And I fall into one category. There's this, I have only ever seen one type of non-human entity that is not an animal native to, Earth. Mm-hmm. And I saw, with a relative, a gray. And this was in the 1970s, and these two gray aliens were holding equipment.
Uh-huh.
Equipment very reminiscent of tablet or iPad technology.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, the colonel in the book UFO Highway clearly stated that these Greys were so far ahead of us technologically, and that they were using tablet-type technology back in the late 70s.
Also, they were using them like from 1939, the paper-thin tablets and that type of thing with the writing on them. You know, that was...
their technologies, imagine, if they have been there for 25,000 years, and they've been walking sentient beings with, technology that did originate off-planet, because supposedly these Greys were created by the Anunnaki. Now, it gets kind of strange, but there's a connection to Zecharia Sitchin. What did Zecharia Sitchin tell us based on his translations of these ancient, Sumerian, tablets that had cuneiform and whatnot on them? Essentially, the story is that the Anunnaki created this caste of demigods known as the Igigi. The Igigi, in all their depictions by the Sumerians who talk about the Anunnaki, look like Greys. If you've seen the episode of UFO Hunters with Bill Burns, the evidence is clear that these Igigi did not look at all like humans, yet they were sentient beings. They were lords over the human population, beholden only to the Anunnaki themselves. So what does that tell you? These were some sort of being that held power over humanity, but, worked alongside the Anunnaki. Well,
right.
these Greys in Dulce, according to their archaeological tablets, the information there, that was studied by this colonel, by the way. According to them, they are the Igigi. They are the beings that were created. They were eventually seen as a threat to the Anunnaki. This is why they were placed in North America, which is on the other side of the planet, where the humans on that side of the planet had no knowledge of the existence or the sophistication of the humans on the other side of the planet, which was in ancient Sumer, which was between the Tigris and Euphrates River, the cradle of human civilization, at least where civilization evolved to the point of writing and speaking and thinking, much in the way that we do today, where they can develop, large cities and whatnot.
Right.
These Greys claimed they were placed there to die. They were, given the disease, and it's why their numbers are so few today, but they have managed to live. This is all in the book UFO Highway.
Right.
I talk a lot about human origins and transformation hypothesis in particular, which is the belief that we, humans, could not have evolved to the state we are today solely through the prolonged process of mutation and natural selection. Sadly, we lost Lloyd Pye this year.
Right.
And Lloyd Pye talked about, he's the star child skull. You know what I'm talking about?
I sure do. Yeah, there's a guy here in Tampa that still has it.
Yeah, so I met Lloyd Pye in Bucks County, Pennsylvania in 2012, and it was an amazing experience. And a friend of mine, Madison Eli, she was good friends, very close friends with Lloyd, and I produced a show that she did with Lloyd, and they actually brought me into the conversation. And what a wonderful experience that was. Lloyd talked extensively about the genetic evidence of humanity evolving into something that we were not supposed to be, at least not at this point in our evolution. And if you look at even some of the mainstream geneticists, whether they're operating in academia or in the private sector, like for a major pharmaceutical or medical company, there are studies proving that our DNA was altered
right
at some point. And if you go back 250 to 300,000 years ago, there's telltale signatures in our DNA that point to a chemical separation, a chemical alteration occurring in our DNA. Look, all other species on this planet have very few genetic defects in their DNA. As a matter of fact,
that's true.
A chimpanzee, who we are supposedly closest relatives with, the chimpanzee, has less than 250 genetic flaws in their genome.
Mm-hmm.
Humans have over 6,000 genetic defects in their genome, and the number's still rising as we learn more and more about our DNA. The evidence points to somebody having altered us in some way. And it points back to this timeline of 250 to 300,000 years ago, which just happens to coincide with what? The mitochondrial Eve theory.
Yes.
Which states that's when humans became upright and highly intelligent and ventured away from Africa out into Asia and Europe and, other parts of the world. So it's funny how everything points back to the same time period, and, we just have these coincidences. Look, chimpanzees and humans evolved from the same genetic tree. Why are chimpanzees still living like they do in the wild, never developed the ability to speak, still are covered in hair? Well, I know some people that are as hairy as chimpanzees, but they're friends of mine. But I mean,
Well, there you have it. I mean, that's an obvious, we couldn't have evolved from them because they're still here. So obviously there is some link there, but there's not any real clarity. I don't buy into the fact that, my uncles are monkeys, but I do know that there is something there, and you're hot onto it. So I do believe that we do have... Oh, go ahead.
Dr. Michael Zimmerman, he's a professor of philosophy out of Tulane University. He said the premise that within our own solar system there was a race of intelligent beings far older than us who are now gone would certainly force us to rethink lots of questions, including the questions of human origin. Where did we come from? Could we be the product of genetic engineering?
Absolutely.
The only issue I have with his statement is he says they are gone now. I don't think they're gone. I think that the Anunnaki are still here. They're known as the Australbus. Some people say they have ranks within the Illuminati. They have ranks within the Bilderberg or organization, that they represent the 1%ers. In fact, it is my personal belief, and I agree with David Icke on this, the 1%ers who run this planet, there is a fraction of a percentage that exists above them.
Yes, that's all possible in my thinking.
Yeah. Those are the beings who may look like us now and talk like us, but they are the true descendants of the Anunnaki that Zechariah Sitchin talks about. They run this planet.
Right.
They have, and originally they were not like humans, and they could not breed with humans. And it took 2 successive generations of genetically altered Anunnaki that could finally breed with humans. And that's so funny. When you look at that information and you compare it to some of the religious texts, the ancient religious texts, you can find origins of many of these stories that talk about natural selection as opposed to, mutation, as opposed, as opposed to genetic alteration. You have all these different pieces of the puzzle. And, okay, in my book, one of the things that I did was I created this model. And I call it a lineal traditional linkage model because I look at cultures from one side of the earth against cultures from the other side of the earth who share similar stories about beings that are not human and who in one way or another affected their own existence. I could tell you about 3 groups. You have, the Dogon tribe in Western Africa in existence at the same time as, the Sumerians out of, the Tigris and Euphrates, modern-day Iraq, and as opposed to the Aztecs. The Aztecs talk about Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli, these deities that they worship that were not human, but highly advanced, highly intelligent, and not from Earth.
Yeah, I've often wondered about the pre-Adamic race and all that. Of course, that's a whole nother story. But, Iraq is where they said, or they say, the actual... Dogon, they what?
The Dogon claim that they are descendants of these beings from a star system that they cannot even see with the naked eye. It wasn't until the 1970s when these French scientists showed up with highly powerful, telescopes and, sophisticated technology, were able to validate the existence of a star system that the Dogon claimed, to be descendants of the beings, they came from the star system. The French scientists were like, these people are crazy, until they validated their arguments and said, oh my God, what? There is a star system with the same exact number of planets or whatever, that, are in orbit. It's a binary star system. It's Sirius A and Sirius B. They claim to be from Sirius B, and they talked about without the ability to see Sirius B, somehow the Dogon knew that Sirius B had this elliptical orbit, and that it came close to Sirius A, every 6 years or something. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, interesting. Not to mention when you couple it with the fact that their beings were these fish-looking people frog-looking people that had silver gray suits, shiny silver gray suits. They were upright beings that resembled what they described as frogs.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Kind of strange. Strange.
There's a lot of strange stuff out there.
Not to mention that the French scientific community validated every part of their story, except for the existence of the beings, the existence of a star system that could not have been seen with the naked eye.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And Kathleen Marden's aunt, Betty Hill, brought back a star system, and, everybody poo-pooed that until we became advanced enough to actually find the facts out that in fact was there all along. We just couldn't see it. So, there are a lot of things that are coming to the light, and very interesting things. And, let's talk about that because we have to take a quick break again. So let's talk about that when we come back. Okay. So stay with us. We'll be right back as we hear from our sponsors.
My name is Michael the Fourth, and I'm the lead investigator for the Seekers Paranormal Society. About 7 years ago, I had my first paranormal experience. Now, armed with the latest in paranormal equipment, I'm setting out to find the truth. Joining me on my quest to capture evidence is my equipment tech Ramon Vivas and investigator Steve Welton. Take a front seat into our paranormal world as we are driven into the unknown. We are Seekers Paranormal Society.
SeekersParanormal.com.
For hundreds of years, those that have been curious enough to look to the stars in search of something beyond ourselves have been shunned, persecuted, and laughed at. Now, it's time for those curious few to laugh back. Saucer Seekers is a hilarious online comic strip that takes a humorous look at our world of disinformation while facing everyday life from the point of view of those who devote their lives to the search for the truth. The Saucer Seekers! TheSaucerSeekers.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies Radio, and we are having a lot of information coming our way here. Just to give you a quick recap, we're talking to Anthony Sanchez. We've discussed Greys, reptilians, the Dulce base, human origins, and Anthony, where are we going next on this highway of information?
One of the questions I get asked a lot is what I feel the establishment is and what it represents. And I find that to be a very interesting question because the establishment, in relation to the UFO research community or the alien UFO research community, has everything to do with the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Norio Hayakawa, who wrote the foreword to my book, UFO Highway, and again, like many of your listeners know from his work on Area 51 in Dulce, he had a chance encounter with Colonel John Alexander in his Las Vegas office. This was in the early 1990s. Apparently, he had just moved into that office. And Norio says that the colonel was cordial and that they asked him questions about non-lethal weapon systems and, the various applications of these weapon systems. And he even asked him, several questions on thanatology, which is, anyway, I don't want to go into that, but he had a lot of information to ask, a lot of questions to ask of the colonel. And the colonel was giving him a lot of feedback until he brought up the question of UFOs. As soon as the colonel heard Noory mention UFOs, that's when his attitude completely changed. He became really upset and pretty much scolded Noory and the people that Noory had with him, and told him to not bring that topic up again at all.
Why so?
Because he said he had absolutely zero interest in UFOs. Mind you, this was in the early 1990s.
Okay.
Now, when they were leaving his office, after Noory had apologized to him, the colonel was leading them out of the office. As soon as he started walking towards the hallway, because Noory was behind the colonel, he went behind his desk, and this is Noory. He went behind the colonel's desk, and he glanced at the computer screen. And lo and behold, to Noory's amazement, there was a partial list of UFO organizations and names of UFO researchers on his screen.
Are you sharing that with us tonight on the highway?
Yeah. So how is it that this man who at that time had no interest in UFOs and did not want to talk about UFOs, how is it that on his screen he had a list of UFO organizations and the names of known researchers? Because remember, Noory was a UFO and still is a UFO researcher, and he knows everybody. But what's important about that experience is this. Look, Robert Bigelow, who owns Bigelow Aerospace out of Nevada, headed up a group in the 90s called NIDS, which was the National Institute for Discovery Science. Well, who do you think was in charge of that group?
Who?
Well, it was Colonel John Alexander. NIDS was this all-star group of researchers, most of them which had come from the ranks of MUFON, that were, being supported by Bigelow, Robert Bigelow. And so I just think that it's strange that this guy who supposedly is not, who's not a UFO enthusiast or researcher, whether it be, on an amateur or professional level, has this really dark and mysterious connection to Bigelow Aerospace, the U.S. military. Well, he's a colonel, and just he's a very ambiguous type personality. Nobody really knows much about him. I mean, even Alex Jones is terrified of this guy. And
terrified of this guy? Really?
Yes, absolutely. If you watch one of the conspiracy theory episodes with Governor Jesse Ventura that had Alex Jones on there, where they talked about Bigelow Aerospace, Alex Jones is, very, even he said this is not the kind of guy you want to mess with. Look, when I went into Coast to Coast in November of 2011, where I talked about my book UFO Highway, holy crikey, the UFO researchers came out of the woodworks.
Really?
I mean, one after the other, to tell, Tom Danheiser, who's the producer of Coast to Coast with George Noory, and they told George Noory to not have me on the show. I didn't know what I was talking about. All the information that I had was suspect, that the guy that I interviewed doesn't even exist, or that he's a fake. And on top of that list, one of the people who sent in an email saying, the circus is coming to town, was Colonel John Alexander. Look, if my story was fabricated, or the people behind my story are fakes, why would he care? Why would any of them care? Wouldn't they rather out this suspect researcher and his fabricated stories than by letting him go on national radio? Look, they even brought Bill Burns onto the show. And unfortunately for them, practically Bill Burns validated the things that I were talking about. In fact, he even knew a Colonel X, just like my Colonel X. So John Alexander and many of the top UFO researchers that we see on TV, they are part of the establishment. They're part of the military-industrial establishment. I have a researcher friend here in California who worked at the Presidio in San Francisco during the 1990s, and his job was to destroy documentation that was of a classified nature. And he saw pay stubs to well-known UFO researchers, many of them with connections to Robert Bigelow, many of them with connections to most of your favorite TV shows, that were pay stubs from the CIA made out to these individuals. Why would
That's
they be
interesting.
paid by the CIA? Yeah. So the establishment exists. It's part of the military-industrial establishment, and there's a big disinformation campaign. They don't want people like me who talk about very, very classified, locations, as in Dulce and Area 51 and Alice Springs, which is in Australia, the Pine Gap facility. They don't like people talking about those types of facilities.
Right.
Or the existence of Greys who are working alongside, human military representatives and, under the cloud of collusion.
Well, they're not doing a very good job keeping people from talking about it.
I find it so strange that this one researcher who had never been to a MUFON meeting shows up to a MUFON meeting that I went to meet with a high-ranking individual within the organization to share my initial information with back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
This person went on this crusade to debunk everything about me and debunk everything about the information that I had. Instead, he just made my information more known.
Exactly.
and more people, got a hold of it and started asking more questions. I filed a standard Form 180 with the National Personnel Records Center for the DD-214 of this United States Air Force colonel, retired. I got sent the DD-214.
Mm-hmm.
In that documentation, it clearly stated a facility in northern New Mexico in Dulce. Now, I gave this document to those people. It's in my book, UFO Highway. I let them take that document, exactly what was given to me by the National Personnel Records Center. I just scrutinized the hell out of it. Mm-hmm. Yes, they found a lot of strange things in that document. But the one thing they did do was take that document back to the federal government. I mean, these are known UFO researchers taking the document back to the federal government. As a matter of fact, it was the Mayfair Institute in this one instance. This is a federally funded organization. Do you think they want to lose their federal funding? Anyway,
I don't think
he asked them to validate the DD-214. The first response was, "It's fake. It's not real." Do you honestly think they're going to look at this guy and say, "Well, Mr. UFO researcher, yes, there is an underground facility where Greys are working alongside humans in collusion, the military"?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
You think that he was going? That's the answer he was going to get. That's what he was expecting. It's look, they're the disinformation campaign. They're the people that are being put out there by people, high-ranking officials within various organizations. And I'm not going to point fingers, but they're put out there to discredit individuals like me who are researchers who are being interviewed and contacted by people who have these outrageous claims that sometimes just sound too true to be,
ignored.
Anything other than truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree.
The more support I get, the more opportunities I have to go to Area 51, to go to Dulce, and now Skinwalker Ranch, which is another place on my list of destinations for later this year in the summer.
That's excellent. We would like to get your book and learn a little bit more about what it is that you're talking about here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
My book is available at only one location, UFOhighway.com. So if you go to UFO Highway, that's where there's actually a link that says get the book. And all of the money from the book goes towards supporting me and Rick Prestel from MUFON, who is one of my fellow researchers here in Northern California. As a matter of fact, Rick is my best friend, and he and I go out to places like New Mexico and Nevada. And now we're going to be going to both Colorado and Utah to do further research on the alien UFO phenomena. UFOhighway.com, that's the website. The name of the book is UFO Highway. George Noory from Coast to Coast said that it's an incredible story, an incredible book. And I agree.
I agree. I also agree. That was such a good book, and I would encourage anybody out there listening to get a hold of it and kind of judge for yourself. It is really a wild trip on the highway, and what intrigued me about it was that so much of it was easily available to check out. I mean, you really could check this information out. So I can't thank you enough for writing it. And yes, unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. I hate that. This is just riveting stuff, and I could talk to you all night. But we do have limitations. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight, and I hope that you can make it back again sometime soon on our program. And I know that you'll be in Florida for the Apicon in May, I think that is. So the Florida people can certainly sign up for that. So we do look forward to seeing you, and we'll be there to get some interviews with you at that time.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciated being on the show. It's an honor, and I would love to come back as a guest.
Okay, well, we'll be right back as we wrap things up, so stay with us.
4,734 UFO sightings in 2007. 854 abductions by aliens or unknown species reported by American and British citizens. Pressed information about collisions with passenger aircraft and UFOs that has been kept from the public knowledge for years. And only one trusted source on information from some of the top UFO researchers in the world. Exclusive information that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Trusted, connected, accurate. The UFOstore.com. Expand your personal library with fast shipping and instant downloadable information from the largest selection of UFO products on the internet by going to theufostore.com or call on the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week order line at 541-523-2630. The truth is out there, and the UFOstore.com has it.
Welcome back. As we wrap things up tonight, we want to thank Anthony F. Sanchez for taking the time out of his busy schedule to join us here tonight on EA Radio. We hope that you've thoroughly enjoyed your time here with us and that we've opened your mind and challenged your belief systems just a little bit. Please take the time to follow us here on Spreaker.com and leave your comments for us below. For more news stories and information, please visit enigmaticanomalies.com and keep your eyes peeled on our YouTube channel for our brand new feature, EA News. For everyone here at EA Radio, I'm Terry Lang, saying thanks for tuning in. Have a pleasant night and keep looking up.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of Enigmatic Anomalies nor Keel Studios Productions.